Good morning. How are you? Thank you. I don't really have a topic. Oh man, okay. Did you eat something bad? It looks dark outside. I'm getting messages from other sites, but since my live is private, I can't share it out to them. So I'm wondering when they're going to get the notification. Did you ever finish watching the reparations hearing? I haven't. And I know I got to start my feedback, but they pissing me off. I think that man was Haitian. He looked Haitian. The one that kept talking about the Caribbean. Lately, everybody's been going live at the same time. So I've been bouncing from room to room. Hey, Crypto. Good morning. Crypto, where you live? What state you live in, Crypto? Hello, cousin. Good morning, Sage. And Z just went live. But
Good
outside.
morning, precious one. How are you today?
Aw, okay. How are you?
10 fingers, 10 toes, deep breath, good day.
Yes, yes. That works.
I try not to be greedy if I don't have to.
Right. So how are you
I
doing?
love
What's
this
up?
picture, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I use that AI app on Facebook.
If you visited my little, you know, because I don't do a whole lot of stuff online, but if you've ever seen what I got on TikTok, all that's AI.
Ah,
All the stuff that you see posted under me is all AI.
I have to check it out. I haven't exactly checked it out.
I do understand. But beyond that, how's your day going? With any topics in mind potentially?
I don't know. The actual thing, I don't really want to talk about Kirk. Like,
Current events, yes, I understand.
right. Um, that comes to mind. The way they railroading us in reparations in New York comes to mind. Good
What are they
morning.
doing now? Or
Good
attempting to do
morning to
now?
you. Good morning, 713. So they had a virtual meeting that I just didn't know about, and then a few days, like maybe 2 days after, or maybe a day after, I was checking YouTube and I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, let me see what happened." Why I didn't know. So it was just a virtual public hearing, and they had an expert there.
I'm always
Why?
skeptical of experts.
Well, I say he's the expert because what are you calling him for? Grand Rising Student. He gave a
Well,
presentation about a part of Manhattan and talked about early life there, and then he went from slavery to like after slavery and said the Haitians migrated here.
see. Here's my thing. I'm not going to dispute that there were some Haitians that migrated here. I say this, and I've said it before. Between 1860 and 1960, the number of black people who were allowed in the United States was not an absolute zero, but it was a statistical zero. When
Hmm.
it comes to that actual number, they imported 200 million YT folks to come into the country, but they barely let 10,000 black people in. That's statistical zero.
Okay, let me give you the kicker. Um, they were enslavers who brought the enslaved with them. And so
Was there
you think
slavery on Haiti then?
1860? Wait, hold on. So they said 1804. Okay, so they brought their enslaved. So they was talking about Louisiana. But then they said some type of French type of Haitian migrated here in 1860. But they something about something. They were running from the island or something and migrated here and moved into a building. The fact remains they're just I know what happened. They're the ones who went into Louisiana and then started migrating up north. That has to be what they were talking about, because Haiti wasn't enslaved at that time. So we're talking about enslavers, and we know those enslavers were either whitey or mulatto, right? Correct.
Right. Correct.
So, like Brooke was saying, Brooke is a New York reparationist, and she goes to all the meetings, all of them, and sometimes her videos go viral at the meeting. But she was like, and so you think it's fair for them? Oh, Keisha was there. Can you come up, Keisha? Because I'm talking about this Haiti and the reparations
Claim.
meeting. So Brooke was like, "Do you think it's really fair that they get reparations with us? Like, Why y'all just keep mentioning the Caribbean? So here's my thing. They need to fight CARICOM to make CARICOM represent them. Because as far as I understand, CARICOM is only representing those on the island. Thank you for the likes, y'all. Hey, Vic. Now, if they
I agree with that.
Right. So if they took an assumed risk to migrate here, and these are people that say, don't analyze me, I'm a Jamaican. These are people who say, call us all types of slave babies and all of that. We ain't never did this, we ain't never did that, the hood this, the hood that, and this. And you want us to share reparations with them?
Oh no, get your hands out of my pocket.
Right. Now they have their own like incentives, right? So they get scholarships and stuff based off of their lineage. They even sometimes can double dip into whatever pot we got going on. They're actually gentrifiers because, there were foundational Black American communities here before they were allowed to migrate in such record numbers. I think they've gotten enough from our pot, right? And I think
absolutely.
I think that some of the stuff they get should actually come from whitey communities, like put their businesses over there, put their bodies over there. I don't care what you do, but get them up out of here. And get them out of our reparations meeting.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. I'm again, as I've said before, I have no problem with any subsect and a subgroup of American society petitioning the government for their grievance.
Right.
But you do not get to jump to the front of the line. Take your aspirations to the back of the line and wait your turn. We have allowed too many of these subsects, because of kumbaya, to take cuts and jump in front of us. And they end up getting their issues addressed by the government. That's what's actually happening. The government is doing everything that they can to help every other group that they can, except foundational Black Americans.
Yeah, that's true. Dred, did you watch the reparations hearing, or you weren't able to?
What up, DH?
So it's frustrating.
Yeah, it is, but again, the idea is to make sure that that small, dedicated group goes from that lone man in the woods to having a few people come out to him and listen to him while he's out in the wilderness rather than the woods, to eventually having, that one guy, to eventually having them 12 guys, and so on and so on. But it was that dedicated group that got this religious folks where they at today. But it didn't start with everybody on page. It just did not start there. And that's what we are. We are the start. Mm-hmm. And that is what FBA is saying to America. We're the start. So you're going to repair us first. Repair for your crimes against humanity. Now, they want to sugarcoat it in every other way that they want to, but that's what they're trying to avoid doing. Oh, well, technically, we want to split this hair 7 different ways and then get it through this eye of a needle. Please.
But I'm actually wondering if the governor knows what's going on. Because it's a commission. Now, she said, form a commission, right? This is a simple term. Form a commission and give me your recommendations for reparations. I don't believe that they're all foundational. We do know one is a staunch Pan-African who said he won't leave out Harry Belafonte's descendants. He won't leave out Cindy Poitier. He won't leave out there. He won't leave. He won't. So I'm wondering if the way they're going about it is of their own volition and not something the governor agrees with necessarily, even though I want all the Democrats out of office, and I want Nothing to go in the immigrants' favor at this time. Call me, whatever the hell you want to call me, but they're not exactly considerate. There's no way,
I just
shape, or
tell the like,
fashion that I would go to the Caribbean and be like, I deserve reparations with you. Because I visited there and I didn't like the food when I got there. Or the police looked at me as the guy drove by. Like, we just don't do those things. Foundational Black Americans don't do those things. And if you notice, we could go after the Brits. We could go after the Dutch. We have a couple of enslavers that we could go after. And we're just choosing
absolutely.
to go after our government.
First. Not only, just first.
Yeah, I want to go after Africa. Because I think it's their fault.
Well, I would say this when it comes to if those nations.
You love Africa.
No, but let me say it like this. I'm looking. I want to. Okay, could you agree that there is an awakening happening on the continent?
No, I cannot. What I see is one man who's worried about his region. He's already said that he can't take on the whole continent. What I see is a bunch of other people riding his coattails saying, Africa is rising. We have Traore. Like Traore's fighting for the whole continent. He's not.
Now, I agree with that.
There's slavery going on there. There's no awakening. It's a bunch of leeching. It's slavery. And it's only one man who has the heart to oust his colonizers.
Oppressors. Exactly.
So I don't
agree.
see an
This
awakening.
is what I'm speaking to. Hear me out. This is what I say when I say the awakening is happening on the continent. Has it reached the entire continent? Hell no. But too many on the continent are claiming that title and pride. Okay? But that same awakening that is happening over there is an awakening, although we're not, they're awakening, we're woke already. But that's where they're coming to. When I'm trying to say is, I get it, they got issues over there. But at some point, we are going to have to look at our brothers and sisters on the continent with softer eyes. Right now, we're looking at them with hard eyes, and I agree. Okay? I agree, they should be definitely side-eyed. But when it comes to the overall population of melanated folks versus non-melanated folks, we're going to have to eventually set aside that side eye and look at them with soft eyes.
Have you ever heard the story of the farmer and the snake?
Tell it, Dre. Wait, let me say this. Cousin, where you been for the last 30-something years? We've always looked at them with soft eyes.
Oh, no, I'm aware. I'm just saying, but see, now we're guarded. Now we're looking at them with hard eyes. And I'm saying eventually we're going to have to get back to the soft eyes. But right now, we have to take a firm stand and position. So I'm not disagreeing with the putting my flag in the line, putting my line in the sand. I'm not disagreeing with that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe at some point in time, we're only going to build a bridge halfway, and it's going to be a two-way street. Okay? And until I see that bridge from the other side, I'm not sticking over a line. I'm not sitting over a cord, a line, something for you to cross by. No, I'm not going to do that.
They are flagging us for hate speech.
What the who? What did we? How did that happen?
There's only 3 of us in here.
Right. Well, there's somebody in the hallway.
And I was very clear and specific not to say anything along those lines. I take these little sensitive things.
About reparations, I don't know.
These little sensitive things out there. My feelings, my feelings, my feelings.
I'm gonna keep it real with you. Like honestly, even your words when you mentioned Africa, you were not saying anything harsh.
I know.
You didn't say anything harsh.
What part of brothers and sisters sounds bad? Okay.
And you see why we can't look at them with the soft eyes. Look at this. Look at her getting flagged already. Forget that soft eye stuff, man.
I said
Let
down
it
the
go,
line.
man.
Soft eyes down the line. Soft
Let it
eyes
go,
down the
brother.
line. We're not looking at them with soft eyes
Nah.
now. No.
You see what it got us? got
Uh-huh.
got the sister flag, man. Nah, man, we ain't going back.
And no, we didn't say
We're not
nothing.
going back.
No, we didn't say nothing.
We're not going back.
I just think that they've given enough. We didn't even
They've been
give them the
kumbaya'd
rope.
enough.
Wait. We didn't even give them the rope because we didn't really know what they were doing. Even though we know the history, we thought they were different than their ancestors. So, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me a few times, shame on me. That's where I'm at with it. So I'm not gonna go around knocking anybody upside the head, but I'm not supporting their businesses. Like, I'm over them. I don't want a relationship with them. I don't want to be their friend. I don't even know if I care about what's going on over there anymore. Because don't nobody have no caring or understanding for us. And the only time they say, well, y'all need us, is when they think that they got to go back to that continent and that we support them going back to the continent, right? But the way I see it, we've always been on our own. Even with them here for these past, how long they been here? In record numbers, 60 years? They ain't do nothing with us. They ain't do nothing for us. And they damn sure ain't gonna fight with us if a civil broke out. They're still crying over being called the booty scratcher. There's no way these people are built for America's white tea people coming at us.
No, they're not. That is absolutely true. They
Right.
would not be in line with where we're at. Too many of them, in my opinion, have looked at the opportunity that they have been granted as the end all be all. And again, this is why you get them come. We're doing so much better than y'all. No, you're not. Everything you think you got, we've already done it. You start a business, we started towns. You got a degree, we have patents. Stop it with this. Their insane arguments are infantile and small. But again, I try and realize that their colonizers did not give them the full picture. They were completely and utterly lied to about real history. And they're only going off that minimal education.
They lie so much. How do we know what's the truth with them?
Because they got their education from their colonizer. They didn't get it from themselves. They're literally their education. If they, again, you talk to them, you ask them, what did you learn about slavery?
Here's the thing. I don't have any empathy for them for that, because when you're 1.5 billion strong and you are the people in power within your own countries, if you choose to be educated by the colonizers, that's your own personal choice. I don't have no sympathy or empathy for them for that.
But this is what I'm failing to understand. I don't really know what their school system is like, right? But what I'm saying is, why wouldn't the colonizers tell them the truth? The truth is some of their tribes, got into bed with the Europeans. So I don't trust them. I don't trust them to tell us the truth. I think they know more than they say. And I think that they only use us for like social currency or to be their voice because they're scared they'll be deported if they speak in a manner that we could speak. I think there's a whole lot of using going on, no reciprocation. And that if Trump wasn't in office and Kamala was, they'd be giving us the ass to kiss.
Yep.
No, I gotta agree with that. I do. See, again, my goal is for us within the B1 FBA community to just make sure that we are in line and on code. That's what I want to do. Now, the goal is for us to grow more
Hey, Easy does
powerful
it. Hmm.
so that we can effectively move the policies that we need. But we cannot have any of these other outside groups jumping into politics and getting in front of us. I am absolutely 100% against that.
Thank you.
If you're going to be
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
a melanated person and you get into politics, you need to be fighting for this melanated family here.
I don't think that somebody showed the picture, did a whole 6-minute segment video on the CBC. It's like that thing just needs to go away. And I don't think, and we don't, I hope you're not trying to allude to the fact that we need the immigrants to vote our way, like the black, the Afro-descendant immigrants, because I ain't calling them black no more.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Okay, good.
I'm saying if they are,
because we outnumber them greatly. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody, and I'm just using this name as an example, but if Wes Moore is going to go up in here and take a position of political authority, his primary goal is supposed to be tending to his people first. His people first. And now, I'm only using Wes Moore, but I'm saying in the fact that if he were full FBA, he should be rocking for FBA policies first.
That man don't look like he got any FBA in him.
Well, the military will do that to you. The military will beat that out of you quick, fast, and in a hurry, particularly if you are a person, if you're black. They're going to make sure that you know you follow orders, you don't do nothing outside of the chain of command. And that's all he's been doing since he's gotten out the military.
Well, I'm going to tell you one thing. I wouldn't take a chance on voting them in. Anybody can say anything when they're campaigning. Look at Hillary, a hot sauce in my bag, and whoever else sold us the dream. They get in there and they forget about us. But I want to introduce Keisha to the chat. Good morning.
Good morning, sis. Good morning, brothers.
Good morning.
How's your day going, sister?
Good so far. I was on my bike. I had to pull over. So I couldn't get on early. But
well, that's a good thing. That means we got some attention.
Oh yes. I try to get it in as much as I can, brother.
Now, what were you saying, sister? I know I cut you off, so I apologize.
No problem, brother. I was just listening to the live while I was riding. But like the sister said, all of these reparations hearings are here in the state of New York, and I've been to all of them except for 2. You always have people from the Caribbean and Africa who come up and try to grandfather themselves onto the reparations deal. In fact, they become sometimes belligerent. The one, I think maybe 3 months ago at the Schomburg in New York, I had to, contain our sister Brooke and some sisters from the Freedmen's Project because it was just so disrespectful. And what's happening is, as the sister said, there are a few Pan-Africanists who are on the commission, and they appoint these historians to come up and give historical pieces relating to slavery and other things that happen here in the state of New York. And that is a problem. The historians that are chosen, they're given a specific parameter which to work within. And in order to fill up time, I believe, this is just my opinion, they start talking about issues with redlining and other things, and eventually speaking about those from the diaspora who migrated here for whatever reason onto this reparations package. And so unless you have dissenting voices, such as myself, the Freedmen's Project, Sister Brooke, to come up and combat that type of rhetoric or historical framing, it's problematic. And we have to be consistent in, standing up against that. One of the things that I am proud of the U.S. Freedmen's Project for doing is drafting a bill for delineation and disaggregation. And, kudos to Assemblywoman Nikki Lucas, who actually brought the bill to the floor. The problem we are having is getting the brothers and sisters who are FDA to sign the petition, because once she comes to the floor again, the more signatures we have, the better it is for us to get this bill passed, at least here in New York, and that could spread across the country. Because when you look at the policies and programs that are centralized to the Caribbean or to African brothers and sisters here in New York, they have already disaggregated themselves. They have whole PSA pieces saying such. We are just late to the game. And this is just what it is. And, when I hear you, brother, when you say we have to have a little softness for Africa right now, because of what Ibrahim Traore is doing, and I say kudos to him, but they too sold us. And half-witted apologies with no substances isn't sufficient anymore. And that's why, we continue to look at them with hard eyes. There was a meeting a few years ago here in Queens, New York, and the former spokesperson for the African Union, Dr. Aaron Connor, she invited me to speak, to open up for her. And so when I got there, she came with a delegation. But when I got there, I'm very good at reading the room. And some of the things that she was talking about is right in line with what we're talking about. She says that Africa can no longer offer frivolous apologies, that they have to offer us more, that they should have complete cities already designed for us to come and live, that we shouldn't have to bring our resources. We already gave them the most important resources, our bodies. And when you look at how that whole area, what is now Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Ghana in particular, they had thriving hubs of enslavement that was profitable for that region at that particular time. It's not like if Europeans rushed in, kidnapped us, stole us, and then, brought us across the shores. No, these were businessmen and elite families who were selling people due to tribal beefs. And so it was a hub, that whole area of enslavement. And, apology is disrespectful at this point. You shouldn't have to tell the diaspora to come back home and bring your resources and join with us. No, you have to do better, because when they come here, based on the work of our ancestors, when it comes to getting laws passed, specialized programs, and the like, they already have a system that is welcoming to them, that they can benefit from, and they do. And so the scale is not even. And until it's even, and until they pay reparations, I'm not trying to hear nothing they trying to do. Yes, I want Ibrahim Traore to be successful, but I want him to be successful for a different reason. Because once that area becomes successful, we're coming to you for our reparations next. Because you were the hub of the enslavement that happened. And a lot of people, you have to look at history not for feel good, but for the entirety for what it is, so that we can make sound decisions. And right after Dr. Aaron Connor said that, 2 weeks later, she was removed from the speaker at the African Union. And I told her that at that meeting, when I got up to speak, I said, I don't know these people. And I turned to her and I said, dear sister, I am telling you that they are coming for you, because they don't like what you just said. And you saw them squirming in their seats. Like I said, 2 weeks later, she was removed as AU speaker. And so they know what they are doing. We just have to understand that this is until, Dr. Chancellor Williams, he said that until Africa comes to terms with what it has done, you will not become unified. You have to make this right. And they haven't made it right yet. And so that's my problem with it all.
Yeah,
I could agree with all of that, sister. I could agree with all of that. See, part of the thing, the nations or those countries back then who did all of that evil, they were not in a, I guess I'll say it like this, they're not in a financial position for us to attack them and make a claim against them. I have no problem wanting them to build themselves up so we can make our claim. I want that fully. I really do.
Can I ask you a question?
We've all heard of Mount Tamu. Shoot.
Can I ask you a question? Where does the profits from the Door of No Return, the Forgetful Tree Museum, and now Benin is building a slavery theme park, where are all those profits going? Because they don't really need those profits. They can fork that over. Don't. And I'm also going to say this. Sometimes it's not about what you win, it's did you get the message. You can no longer rely on Black Americans come over here, displace us, replace our businesses, build these little enclaves in our neighborhoods, and then turn around and call us and our children trash. You can no longer talk bad about our ancestors. And as long as it's on record that they owe us something, when I'm in the spiritual world and my great, or with, however great can get it, it's on record. They can just go ahead over there and get it. But they got to cut it out. They need a spanking. And that looks like
I agree.
Government. And then here's another thing, right? Not everybody want to go move to Africa. But that doesn't mean that door, what they got now, the return home program, something from them should come to us. The ones who don't want to move there, but you still owe. You understand what I'm saying, cousin?
Yeah, I do. This is why I'm as sisters points out, with Traore doing what he's doing.
They made a bad business deal, right? All the way around the board. But that don't mean I gotta feel sorry for them for the rest of my life, because I gave it an honest try. And ever since I've been trying to reach out to the continent since 2010, when Facebook came around, I've been told, good morning, Leo, I'm not African enough. A European born over there is more African than me. I've been told African American children are trash. I've been told this, I've been told that, I've been told, and I'm tired of being told stuff. And I'm tired of them siphoning from us. And I'm tired of them
I think that's been the case.
Us. I'm going to land right here. Siphoning from us while they dress in all our aesthetics, using all our civil rights and liberties, and using our toilet bowls. How about that? But seriously, I'm tired of them, cousin.
Sister, I'm not saying that you're wrong for it at all. Mm-hmm. I believe that we as FBA, one of the things that particularly when it comes to this government's activities, they don't really ask our opinion. They get up in there, them 435 people get up in there and make these decisions and then say, okay, here's the rules you all have to live by. But they have never come and asked us. They've never asked you, how do you feel about sending money over to them small hats? They've never asked us that. They didn't ask they didn't ask us how did we feel about the Marshall Plan and rebuilding Europe and who was going to have to foot that bill. They didn't ask us. They just did it. And now we're in a position where we're making them say, you got to pay attention to us. You have to address us. And now all these other groups are like, well, that's not fair. You've been kicked rocks talking about that fairness. Okay. I'm not trying to hear that no more.
I don't think that Africa should ask for anything from us. I don't think they should expect to be on our slavery claims. I feel like Africa is different than those countries that you mentioned, right? And if we found the right person, right, to file a case or mention back the hell up or think about what you owe the people who don't want to go to your return to home program, they'll pay attention. That's what I think. Yeah. Hi, Keisha. You want to say something, Keisha?
Yeah, just so that we clear, when the transatlantic slave trade was happening, we're not talking about poor folks. They were elite dynasty families who controlled that slave, what they called the supercargo of enslavement. In fact, that when you go to Ghana, right, oftentimes these are what do you call them, return home trips, or just tourist trips. They take you to places like the Elmina slave castles or the slave dungeons. They never take people to the Salaga.
Good morning, Ray.
The reason why they never take you to the Salaga, and they actually had a museum, they closed it down, but they want to reopen it. The reason why they never took you to the Salaga is because that's where, on a daily basis, they held a minimum of 300,000 to 400,000 people for enslavement purposes. You had people, let's say, me and the brother was married, and we get into an argument, and he's still hot from that argument, and he tells me, "Come on, wife, we're going to the supermarket, let's say, and we're going to buy some groceries." And while I'm looking through the supermarket for groceries, people kidnap me, and he's standing there smiling because he just sold me. This is what was happening. And I think it's very important that we really look at that history and understand that, when these folks come back over here, they do have this angst that they are better than us, that we are the Akata, because they know that history. They are well versed in that. In fact, Kwame Nkrumah, he spoke often of it, and he wrote a letter to Martin Luther King, and I think you can find it online. But anyway, he wrote a letter to him, apologizing and asking him for, his intellect in helping him to make Ghana what it was, what it should be, actually. And so, he employed the works of people like Dr. King and Malcolm to help him, draft that constitution that they actually have. In fact, Dr. John Henry Clark helped write Ghana's constitution. But, when it comes to us, it seems as if they believe that the majority of us, and unfortunately, the majority don't know the history. And so when they do come over here and they do have that type of angst towards us, we have to understand where all of that is coming from. And, I see a line that has been drawn, years ago. I'm a child of the 70s, born in 1970. And so when you had the huge Pan-African movement, it was to get them to understand that they were welcome here, that they were a part of who we are, and that we showed them how we uplift them.
How are you?
And then what happened was they became angry, some of them, telling us that we were wearing the wrong garments. We didn't understand what those garments meant, and so on and so forth. And I said to one, when I was a teenager coming out of high school, there were a myriad of racial cases that were happening here in New York. You had the Howard Beach incident. Yusuf Hawkins was unalived. You had the unaliving of the Central Park jogger. You had the kidnapping in GR8 of Tawana Brawley. You had all of these cases that were happening right after the next. And so the entire Black diaspora here in New York and the country became fearful, if you will. And it was foundational Black American attorneys who fought for these people and their families, and they were all disbarred. All of them illegally disbarred for fighting for the diaspora. I used to belong to an organization called the United African Movement. And the United African Movement, all of these videos you see on YouTube with Dr. Clark, Dr. Ben, Shashi McIntyre, all of these, they were recorded at UAN forums. We had an institutional hub, an educational hub that was also active in the community. And so when they had these programs, whether it was Dr. Nathan or Julia Hare, all of those speeches you see in those lectures, they came out of UAM. This was free to the community every Wednesday at 7 p.m. If you got there at 7:10, you couldn't even get a seat. And so that's why Pan-Africanism grew here. New York was the hub of Pan-Africanism. We embraced everyone. When the sister was GR8 by Dominique Strauss-Kahn, it was foundational Black Americans who stopped that man from leaving and going back to France, one of the most powerful men in the world. Not no Senegalese. They didn't help us. It was me and 3 other sisters who went out in the heat and got signatures due to direction of brothers from 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care and brothers from the Nation of Islam who offered protection to her and her attorney, Brother Fred Thompson. And so we stopped that man. But you can't find me one African of all of the state of New York who will come to these reparations hearings and speak on our behalf. That's not fair. We can't continue to lay down for everybody. That has to stop. It has to. Yusuf Hawkins' father is stepfather was from the Caribbean. Where were the Caribbeans in helping in that? You couldn't find them, maybe 1 or 2, but where was the community? Another recent case with Chanel Lewis, who in my opinion was railroaded for the GRA8 of the woman in Howard Beach. Where was the Caribbean community? Nowhere to be found. It was foundational Black Americans. We went to the court cases every day. We sat and supported the family. Nobody. And actually, we went to the board of the West Indian Day Parade and asked them, will you support this Jamaican family who is going through this right now? We didn't get a response. When Brother Divine from the U.S. Freedmen's Project reached out to over 100 Caribbean and African organizations who operate out of the state of New York, if they would just support us in our claim for reparations, not one responded. Not one. When it was foundational Black Americans who made the West Indian Day Parade happen in the first place. It was those musicians like Ella Fitzgerald and Count Basie and, news publications like the Amsterdam News who bridged the gap between the West Indian community and the foundational Black American community, so that Miss Jessie Waddell, who was Trinidadian, to help her have these grand balls, and eventually they moved down into the streets of Harlem. The West Indian Day Parade started in Harlem, but you never hear them talk about that history, that if it wasn't for us, they would not be. The first grand ball of that kind, the Masquerade Ball, was held at the Audubon Ballroom, where Malcolm was unalived at. These people don't want to talk about the history because it makes their claim or their distorted history unravel. And they don't want that to happen. I'm saying, where is the compassion and the help for us the way we've given it to you? It doesn't exist. And so we have to stop. We can no longer lay down and be the bread and butter for everybody else while they feed off of us like we're a caucus. That's just where I am with it. Just find me one group, one organization that will support us in our reparations claim. And then I'll come back to the table and we can talk again. But since we've been fighting for reparations, not one. And you can't tell me, they don't know no better, because they do. When Ramali Graham's son was unalived, it was foundational Black Americans who went and provided security for his family. It was foundational Black Americans that showed up for all of those court cases. He said, his father said out of his mouth at the Adam Clayton Power State Building, there was a meeting that was held, and he said to all of us, he said, when I came to this country, or when my family came to this country, we came for a better way of life. We came because we didn't have what we needed in Jamaica. We came here. He said, when I saw y'all protesting and, arguing things that we thought were frivolous. We thought it was frivolous. He said, I didn't understand it until it happened to me. This is what his father said. And so even though he said that, where is he when it comes to our reparations claim? Nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. And so, we as a people who are FBA or freedmen, as you wish to identify, we are tired. We've been here in the trenches with these folks. We were the ones, when I was in college, I went to John Jay University for criminal law. When we were in college, it was those Black student unions that put pressure on companies to divest from South Africa. But when Nelson Mandela came here and he was asked, would he support us? He said he does not wish to get into the affairs of America and American Blacks. That's what he said out of his mouth.
Wow.
And
Dr.
A lot of this I'm just finding out.
Yes, and
and
Dr. Khalid Muhammad had to check him on that.
Mm-hmm.
And his own wife at the time checked him on that. That's one of the reasons why he divorced when he got out. And see,
I'll accept yes.
Yes, because we got to stop at some point. We can't do it anymore. It's not fair. And you want us to come home? To what? You don't even have unity where you're at. Right now, you got Ghanaians trying to kick the Nigerians out. Right now, you got Somalians and Ethiopians who are complaining about the water lines that Egypt is controlling and won't let them into. So they don't have unity there. That's why they fled. But we have to embrace everybody? I think not. Until the road is clear, I'm not embracing with nobody no more. Because it was my back who was out there walking for 3-4 hours getting signatures so this sister's attacker could be held. And I can't find one Senegalese, one Nigerian. In fact, just the last meeting we had, which was virtual for reparations, you had a Nigerian American who came up and she said, yeah, I know Black people deserve reparations for the past, but we're dealing with the future now. She works in the prison system, and that, we need to focus on brothers and sisters who are in prisons. But I say, when we focus on our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated, the way you're laying it out, your grandfather and everybody else into it too. Because I don't think brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, whether they're incarcerated or not, should be included in any reparations package for us. And these are the kinds of rhetorics that we continuously have to deal with. But again, I know people don't understand the history of Pan-Africanism and how it worked here in New York. New York was the hub. When New York started picking it up, other spaces around the country started picking it up. Why? Because New York was the hub of a litany of racial cases against Black people. And at that time, everybody was afraid. Everybody was afraid. When we went up to Poughkeepsie, New York, for Tawana Brawley, you couldn't find no folks from the diaspora. Where were they? But they live up there, though. But where were they in support? They weren't nowhere to be found. And they still
You remember
aren't.
Botham John, sister?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Black Authority?
I am, sir.
Okay. I'm only saying this to say, he mentioned, as you know, when this occurred, he Now this foreign man came up and his brother come up and hug this woman that killed your brother. But you want the black community to come out and fight for you? No, that's not going to happen. That is not going to happen. And so at this point, if something occurs, I need to know you on my team before I decide to go out there and get in line to stand up. And until they can show that they on our team, not we on their team.
Right.
They on our team.
Right.
When they can do that, then I can stand with you.
So you
But,
did,
you know,
Keisha, I'm sorry to cut you off, cousin. You did have a live about the West Indian Day Parade. Because all I knew about was the Trinidadian lady taking herself. Did she request that day? How did she get the holiday? Because I was under the assumption.
What happened was she wanted to hold these bulls in commemoration of, their history and their heritage. And she couldn't find any spaces that would host her. And so you had clubs like the Savoy or the Gold Room and all of these places that were Black owned or managed by Black people. And so the writers of the Amsterdam News and, Black elite and, entertainers would perform and hang out at these ballrooms. And so she was hanging out there, had a conversation with, I think his name is Calvin McClellan, who was a former musician and became a partner of the Amsterdam News. She had a conversation and a relationship with him, not a intimate relationship, but, a brother and sister relationship with him. And she talked to him about having these balls. And so he said, let me talk to some friends of mine and see if we can help you out. And what happened was he went to the Audubon, which was Black owned, and talked to the owner and asked if she can have her ball there. And of course, as a business decision, he agreed to do so. And so those masquerade balls, were hosted in Harlem. And as they saw what the parties was, McClellan and others of the Amsterdam News started writing pieces trying to convince the FBA community to give it a chance, to come out and, support them. And the community did, based on the word of the Amsterdam News. The Amsterdam News was pivotal in making the connection between Miss Waddell and the politicians in Harlem, New York, later becoming one of them being Adam Clayton Powell, who actually helped her get some of the permits that she needed to bring them outdoors. Because once the community started to embrace it, they couldn't hold them any longer in these grand ballrooms. I think the Gold Room was so big, I think they held about 10,000 people, from my understanding or my reading of the articles of that time. But, she began, based on her reputation and her connection with the Amsterdam News, started meeting people like Count Basie, Ella Fitzgerald, and a lot of musicians of that time. And they agreed to perform the entertainment for those balls, again, trying to bridge the gap between the FBA community and the West Indian community, and it worked. And so,
were the two communities at odds at that time?
No, they weren't at odds, but we weren't embracing that type of culture because that's not our culture. Right. And so when she was hosting these balls, the Caribbean community, they couldn't fill up 10,000 in the grand ballroom. And so she was actually losing money. And so that's why, she reached out to her friend, who was the co-owner of the Amsterdam at that time, if he would, write about it. And he did. He did. And it worked. Like I said, once the Black musicians agreed to come in, because again, they all hung around the same circles. And she was one of the few of the Caribbean who were invited to some of these entertainment events that took place. And so she developed a relationship with a lot of them. And they said, sure, we'll come out and we'll help. And once you had
Hey, Mia,
persons
thank you.
like Ella Fitzgerald, Count Basie, and, Duke, it's not Duke Ellington, his name is on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, once they
Now,
started
Langston
performing,
Hughes, was Langston Hughes around at that time?
yes, actually, the person who introduced her to the politicians so that she can have the permits and take it outside was Madam C.J. Walker's daughter, Alea. She made that connection because she used to host these parties in her home. And these parties, she had a parlor home because she had the business downstairs, but it was a brownstone with 6 levels. And so these parties, were taking place almost every night. And so when Miss Waddell would attend these parties, she developed a relationship with Madam C.J. Walker's daughter. And, again, out of relationships with FBA, they were able to make these things happen. And so even she, I think her name was Alaya. I'm trying to not butcher her name. But anyway, she, and along with Maritcha Lyons, who was abolitionist in Brooklyn, and others, and even Marcus Garvey's first wife, the first Amy Garvey, which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But
the one he allegedly was, did he allegedly hit her or something?
Well, what happened, I don't know if he hit her, but he did do her dirty. Right. He married her best friend, which is the second Amy. The second Amy was her maid of honor. And, he ended up marrying her, even though it was the first wife who took a bullet for him when people came to shoot him. They shot him.
Oh, you can't say, you got to say pew pew. Were any of them foundational or were they Caribbean?
Say that again?
Were any of them foundational or were they Caribbean, the wives?
Both of them were Caribbean.
Okay.
Both of them were Caribbean. In fact, the first wife, it was her family who put up the money for the UNIA. She came from a very well-to-do family. Her father provided food for the workers on the Panama Canal. And so when he met her, she convinced her family to help him. He actually tried to run for political office in Jamaica, but the people of Jamaica wasn't having it. And so he lost that election, and he formed with her and her family the UNIA. And so there's a great book called Set the World on Fire by Dr. Keisha N. Blaine. And she talks about the women of the UNIA. It was an FBA sister named Maud Minty Gordon. And she had an organization, I think it was called the Children of Ethiopia. I think that's what it's called, but don't quote me on that.
Thank you, Brian.
But her organization had 300,000 members. And she requested those 300,000 members to also join the UNIA. And so 300,000 people were already brought in by this woman. It was FBA women who went across the country speaking heavily about the UNIA. That's how it built itself. Marcus Garvey wasn't out in the streets and recruiting people one by one and like we like to believe. Oh no, that's not what happened. So I would encourage everyone to get that book and read it, and it would change your perspective about the UNIA and who were the original founders. Who were the original recruiters, I should say, of the UNIA. Can you say
the name again for us?
Maud Minty Gordon. In fact, she was arrested I think just prior to Garvey's first arrest, or right along the same time, she too was arrested because she was such a heavy recruiter. Persons like Queen Mother Moore was also a heavy recruiter for the UNIA. And, we like to a lot of people, I should say, really don't know the history of the women of the UNIA, or the majority of whom, with the exception of his 2 wives, were FBA women. and they were the heavy recruiters around the country. And so that history, gets thrown out. And I know this because there's a film on Amazon Prime right now. It's called Messiah. It's about the trial of Marcus Garvey. I'm one of the associate producers on that film. And so
what were these years, sister? And congratulations, yes. But these years specifically, not specifically, but I'm timeline as far as American history is what I'm trying to get to. Marcus Garvey, his period shortly after that. Well, our black FBA sisters back then were fighting for their cause. And then on the other side, you had, that suffrage thing that they were trying. I'm just saying, right. I guess our sisters have always been there and doing what they need to do. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but please continue, sister.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. And, it was so many of them that are unnamed who helped build that organization and, worked with the second Mrs. Garvey to try to keep it alive once he was deported. But again, it dissolved for a myriad of reasons, and it was no more. But we have to talk about those FBA women who made that happen. Those FBA women who supported the first Mrs. Garvey once he divorced her. She left and she went to England and she formed, I forget, the name of her organization that she formed in England, which was a Pan-African organization. And then later she came back to Brooklyn, to Brownsville area to be exact, for a meeting. And she talked about and thanked the black FBA women who supported her and who loved on her so much. There's an article, I believe you may be able to find it online, when she came to places like Brownsville and what is now Fort Greene area of Brooklyn, and thanked those black women for everything that they did for the UNIA. So, if you get a chance to get that book, Set the World on Fire, and it will change your perspective about the women and the work that they did, those FBA women, to make the UNIA what it was. When Garvey came here, he came here looking for Booker T. Washington. He idolized Booker T. And he wrote a speech. There's a book called The Selected Works and Speeches of Marcus Messiah Garvey, pages 14 to 16 to be exact. And he said, and I quote, that the Negro of the America is the peer of all Negroes. He said when he got here, he saw banks, he saw real estate development, he saw commercial development, he saw industries that were founded and led by black people like he never saw before. He asked the Caribbean folks, he said, where is your Fred Douglass? Where is your Booker T? You have yet to produce them. He said he was in awe when he got here. He went to Pittsburgh, he went to Chicago, he went to Boston, he went to New York, he went to several states in the U.S. And what he saw, the FB, or what he called the American Negro, he said they were profound. He said to the Caribbean brothers and sisters of the diaspora, he said, and I quote, you have had 75 years of emancipation and you have yet to match what your American brother is doing. He idolized Booker T, but of course, when he got here, Booker T had already transitioned. And so he modeled the UNIA after what Booker T did with the Tuskegee House, or the Tuskegee University. He modeled UNIA after that. There's another book about Booker T written by Dr. Taurine Wright, and she writes heavily about how Garvey idolized Booker T, how he wrote about Booker T, how when he first formed the UNIA, he used Booker T's picture as a model for what the UNIA should look like. And so when he started opening or trying to open successful businesses, he tried to do it the same way Booker T did it. But he failed at some of the things because unlike Booker T knew that he couldn't run everything by himself. And so he employed the works of W.E.B. Du Bois and others to help him with that process. But Garvey got here and he tried to do everything on his own. And when you try to wear all hats, you will sink the ship. And that's what happened with the UNIA. And so, we really have to verse and get ourselves reacquainted with not feel-good history, but what history is. History is just a blueprint and a guide for how society operates at a particular time. It's not for us to pull out things that make us feel good about it. We got to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly so that we don't make these mistakes anymore. And so when I research and study history, I look at it from that perspective so that I and everybody around me don't continue to make the same mistakes that we did in the past. And so this delineation movement and disaggregation is key to us getting it right. And like Dr. Chancellor Williams says, until we get our tribes in order, we're going to continue to fail. And so we are getting our tribe in order right now. It's the diaspora that needs to get its tribe in order. So when they come into our spaces, talking about or talking down to FBA or FBA culture, or we don't have a culture, that's not for you to do. Your job is to convince your tribe. Don't try to convince us. Convince your tribe to get on code. Because once we are all on code, brother, then we can have true Pan-Africanism. But until they all get themselves in order, we should have no part of what they are doing. Because it will never be cohesive. We will never understand. It's just like when you have a gang truce, right? If you have a gang truce and you get your tribe in order, we'll get our tribe in order, and there will be no crime for this allotment of time. We will respect each other. It works because each tribe or each gang is getting their troops in order. We have to do that on a grand scale when it comes to our ethnicity. And so this FBA movement right now is proof positive that when you get your troop in order or your tribe in order, it will shake up the foundation of everything else. And we have always, this according to Garvey. This is according to Garvey. That's why I say people need to read his writings when he first got here. Not when he formed the UNIA. Read what he said when he first got here and how he looked at everything that we were doing as a model for what the diaspora needs to do. That's what he said out of his own mouth. And so, I know a lot of people, they study and research and read about the UNIA, but I learned history and law and politics from one of the greatest who ever did it. And that was Attorney Alton Maddox. And he used to train us on a weekly basis on how we should use history and politics for a blueprint of how we operate in the world. And this man won every case he ever got before him, including the freedom of Al Sharpton. Without Alton Maddox, Al Sharpton will be behind bars. But a lot of people, and he did every case pro bono. And the reason why he did it is because he wanted to be able to control the situation the same way a military commander controls a battlefield. He said the courtroom is a battlefield, and you have to learn how to operate as a military general. And so when the brother who unalived a priest in Brooklyn, Alton Maddox got him off. When the Central Park jogger case happened, Alton's client was the only one who went home. But when Alton went back he tried to fight for Raymond Santana. You know what he was told? The Latino community said, no, we got this. When he went to Yusuf Salam's mother, because she was of Islamic faith, she didn't want to go the route that Alton took. But when she saw that Michael Briscoe, who was the only of those 7 who went home, When she saw what Alton did, she came to UAM forums. That lady used to sit in the front row every week to listen to Dr. Clark, Dr. Ben, Dr. Shashi McIntyre, Julia and Nathan Hare, Dr. Ernie Smith. I can go on and on and on for days. She came to every forum meeting and asking Alton. But by that time, he had a different attorney. And you just cannot, break that privilege once an attorney is hired unless the client fires him. And so it was too late at that time. But because of what Alton did, and Michael Briscoe not spending his life or the better part of his life in jail or in prison, within a month, Alton had Michael Briscoe home because he put it to the prosecution, I don't want no discovery. I don't want nothing. Give me my 12 in the box right here and right now. We'll go to trial right here and right now. Because he understood that the burden of proof was on the prosecution, not on the defense. So Alton said, give me my 12 in the box right now. And Michael Briscoe went home. And when they saw that, the other attorneys, you had some from the Caribbean, like Colin Moore, who I think, in my humble opinion, was a great attorney at that time. Colin Moore, Joe Mack, all of these black attorneys, because they started following the blueprint of what Alton had already done, they all were illegally disbarred from the practice of law. And some of them later on, fell to health issues. I know Colin Moore did. He had several strokes. Joe Mack, you had Lewis Clayton Jones. Lewis Clayton Jones was also a great attorney. His brother was one of the most prominent ministers in the state of New York, and that's William Augustus Jones, who had his church in Brooklyn. It was Reverend William Augustus Jones, who housed and hid Tawana Brawley and her family in their sanctuary because law enforcement cannot come into a sanctuary. And so he protected that family. Because when Alton went against the perpetrators of the assault on Tawana Brawley, he went up against elite families. If anybody knows anything about Wappingers Falls, New York, that's where the Vanderbilts live. That's where the Rockefellers live. This was a well-to-do community where this young 15-year-old girl was actually kidnapped, taken, and assaulted. It got so thick, that case, one of the perpetrators, he couldn't take it no more. And he started, talking. And, they unalived him. There is about 10 videos. If you put in Tawana Brawley, there is 10 videos that was done by Tap Media, who talked to the police officer who found her, the nurse in the hospital. They talked to the doctors, and every one of these folks said what Tawana said actually happened based on medical science. But the rhetoric came out that this girl was lying. Here it is, a poor black family taking on elite. One of the accused was a New York State prosecutor who had a venereal disease that he ended up giving her. His girlfriend or fiance at the time talked about it in the trial transcript. But a lot of this stuff was, pushed to the side. That's why you had persons like Mike Tyson, Bill Cosby, Louis Farrakhan. All of them came out in the beginning to support Tawana. But once the pressure came on from these elite families, they all backed off. You didn't hear or see them anymore. And so Alton still represented this family until the day he took his last breath. But again, history gets distorted because when you're going up against a media machine, and you have to think, this was in the late 80s, early 90s. What happened to Tawana Brawley happened in 1988. And so, we had to fight against that. And on top of that, he was also defending the family of Yusuf Hawkins and others at the same time. And this man performed miracles in the courtroom. When I say he won every case, he won every case. In fact, it got so bad that the court officers they despised him when he came into the courtroom. And I think he was representing Willie Bosket at the time. And I don't know if you know about
Miss Parker.
The Bosket family, but they were a family of geniuses, but they were also involved in criminality.
But wait, the Basquiat that's not the artist. Isn't there an artist named Basquiat?
No, not Basquiat. Bosket.
Basket. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, Willie Bostic. There's a book. I think the New York Times wrote a book about it. A somewhat distorted view. I have the book somewhere downstairs. But anyway, he was representing him at that time, and because Alton had won all of these cases prior, they really despised this man. And so there was a fight that ensued in the courtroom. Alton was fighting the court officers, Attorney Joe Mack, they were all fighting the court officers at that time. And so Chokwe Lumumba came in to represent Alton in his case. There was so much going on. That's why I said New York City was the hub of Pan-Africanism. And even at that time, you didn't have the majority of the diaspora who joined on. The majority of the protesters were FBA. I was there. What's his name? G2Y was my math teacher. And he instructed us to walk out of school when that happened to not Tawana, but the case before her. It just escapes my mind. Bensonhurst.
Yusuf.
Yes. Not Yusuf. The brother McGriff. Hey, man, his family's from Fort Greene. But anyway, he was assaulted by law enforcement, and they actually gouged his eyes out.
Whoa.
But and Alton represented the family. This was before Tawana Burley. I think it was 1986 or something like that, because I had just got out of high school. But again, all of these cases were taking place at the same time. They were right after each other, and Alton was at the center of most of these cases. And so, the YT elite and the legal establishment, they were on Alton's back heavily because he was winning all of these cases. I mean, what black boy wins a case against unaliving a priest who essayed him when he was a child? It doesn't happen. And Andre Nichols was free thanks to Alton Maddox. When the brother was accused of slashing the face of one of America's top models, Marla Hanson, how did that young man get off? Alton Maddox made it happen because he always told us, you use history as your guide in a battlefield, and that battlefield is the courtroom. You never let up using history. And he employed all of its members of UAM. Know who were members? Not just regular everyday folks like myself. Khalid Muhammad was a member. Dr. John Henry Clark was a member. Dr. Ben was a member. Steve Coakley was a member. All of the Amos Wilson was a member. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people, those of us who were around back then, we know the true history. So that's why when I get up, when I speak on behalf of reparations and FBA history, I know the hell what I'm talking about because I was there. And so, I'm telling you, if you go on YouTube right now, you pull up any of these greats, those lectures that they given, 99.9% of them were held at UAM forums.
Good morning, delineationists. Keisha, I have like 2 or 3 questions, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So, do I hear South Carolina in your voice, or that's straight Brooklyn?
That's straight Brooklyn, but my family does come from South Carolina and Georgia area. But that's straight Brooklyn.
What part?
Both of my grandmothers are buried here in Brooklyn, a mile and a half from where I live.
Okay. All right, because you sound like my father's family, and they're from Monk's Corner in Charleston, South Carolina. And every time you speak, it's like speaking to my older cousins or one of my aunties, his sisters. So I was like, she got to be from South Carolina. But okay, that's that with you say Brooklyn, right? But I think it's a little South Carolina twinge in there because I was able to pick it
that's
up.
what my second.
What part of South Carolina?
My second great grandmother, actually my first great grandmother, she was born in South Carolina, and then she later moved to Georgia, and then finally in the 1940s moved to Brooklyn. So yes, my family is Gullah Geechee. They come from the Beaufort County area, and so yeah, my family, one line of my paternal family comes from that area. My father's side. We come from the Baltimore, Maryland area. We go back to the early 1700s in that area. And my mother's line, my mother's paternal line, actually, they go back into the 1600s. And we have a family reunion every 2 years. And so, yeah, I do have that in my blood, definitely.
Wow. So I wanted to ask, what were the foundational Black American women names who were instrumental in canvassing to start the UNIA, right? UNIA.
The number one was Maud Minty Gordon.
Right.
She was the number one. Then you had people like Eliza, is it Simpson or Sampson? I'm just trying to remember from the book, who was also key in recruiting for the UNIA. Because I'm not looking at it now, but if I pull the book from my shelf, I could give you a litany of names of Black women who were key in forming the UNIA. And like I said, all you got to do is get the book, Set the World on Fire by Dr. Keisha M. Blaine, and you will see the women who helped form the UNIA and keep it going. Like I said, Queen Mother Moore, here out of Harlem, New York, was key and instrumental in recruiting for the UNIA. In fact, when Garvey was deported, she talks about how, she shedded tears to see him gone, to see him leave. And she commanded the members to stand on those shores as the ship drifted further and further away until they could no longer see his white handkerchief wave in the balance. It was Queen Mother Moore who made that happen. There's a couple of videos of her on YouTube, and she talks about her work with the UNIA. She talks about, and you can see her, there's I think maybe 2.5 minute long video of Queen Mother Moore standing outside of a building. I think it was a government building in Harlem, handing out information about reparations and how we deserve reparations, and talking about the UNIA at that time. There are plenty of videos of her on YouTube, but that one in particular, I think, is very, very important that everybody looks to check out, of Queen Mother Moore and reparations. And she was a heavy recruiter for them. And also, like I say, even women who were part of the suffrage movement, Black women, supported Garvey. Maricha Lyons was one of them. Victoria, I can't remember her last name.
You see delineation as he's writing names. He said Amy Jack, Adelaide Casely Hayford, Henrietta Vinton Davis.
Yes.
Okay.
Henrietta Vinton Davis was one of them for sure. Because you have to think about the time. Black men traveling alone throughout the South was much more dangerous than a group of Black women. One Black man by himself can find himself in a whole lot of trouble. And so the women, because they were business women, they knew how to move throughout the South. And Garvey used their intelligence and let them go out and recruit for the UNIA. And they were heavily and heavy successful in gaining that 1 million membership that the UNIA so greatly is proud of. It was because of those FBA women. They did a hell of a job. And I would employ everyone to please research those women, because it will give you a clearer understanding of how the UNIA was formed. I'm telling you, it will change your perspective.
So I am an independent journalist, right? And with my own website, I opted after graduation to go independent because didn't really want anybody editing or telling me how to write my stories or my articles. For the simple fact that I write about Black American history and the impact it has on us today and possible solutions. So that's why as you're talking, questions are just coming up, and I'm asking the questions, right? So I also want to ask with the okay, so with the Go Home Garvey movement, I got two questions, and then because I know it's Saturday, you might got to have some things to do. But with the Go Home Garvey movement, how was that? How brought that about? And do you feel that was warranted? Also, with the erasure by the Caribbean as far as Juneteenth, I would even say that Labor Day parade. I know you told us the history, but I'm wondering why they couldn't pick another day. It's like I seen a Brooklyn Caribbean American. He calls himself historian, and to me, he purposely left out like the Pullman Porters. The erasure in hip hop that they're trying to give all the credit to Herc, the Latinos. How do you just feel about the state of erasure in New York?
Way I feel about it is it's right along with their history and their ideology. And that's what Garvey said in the beginning. You know, they are better than us in so much of a word, and if you give me your email or inbox me your email, I will send you the pages from that book so you can see exactly what he was saying. But when you look at people who were so successful in spite of, and he said, and I quote, Garvey said, the American Negro has a race consciousness that the diaspora does not have. He said that's what binds them together, their race consciousness and what they suffered under white aggression. He said that race consciousness that the American Negro has is unmatched. And they know that. And so in order to become a citizen of the U.S., when you get here, you cannot be disruptive. They know your lifestyle when you apply for citizenship here. They know you are not an agitator. And when you are not an agitator, your system, your citizenship can be a smooth sail into American naturalization. And so when they get here, I understand that they don't want to be disruptive. I understand that they come here for a better way and a better life. But once you get here and you see what's happening and you still speak against or don't stand with FBA, you're a problem. You are a problem. And not everybody has that sentiment. My husband is from Jamaica, but he understands when he got here what he saw, what he lived through. He understands that. So he is right in line with what his wife is saying, what his wife is doing. And we have to have those partnerships. Garvey said in that same book, I think in page 78 or 79, I think. But in that same book, he said the only way that the diaspora could be saved is if they intermarry with the American Negro because of our race consciousness. We have to teach them. That's what Garvey said when he first got here. That's what that man said. And that's why I like Garvey. That's why I love Garvey. I'm not interested in what came later. I'm interested, what he said when he got here, how great we were, how the world has to model us after what we're doing. How he said he saw inventions and great success. He said, you had emancipation. This is what he's saying to the diaspora. You had emancipation for over 75 years. Where are your inventions? You don't have any. He said these folks here in America, they had to deal with these white tees. And they still have a race consciousness to build communities for themselves. And you are still holding on. And so I try to parallel that sentiment with what you're seeing with Ibrahim Traore. I come from a military family, Navy, Army, and Air Force. I just lost a loved one not too long ago during COVID who spent 32 years in naval intelligence. And he said any nation that relies on another for its protection, for its service or servitude will always be subject to that nation. And Africa has not garnered that understanding yet. Ibrahim Traore is protected by Russia and helping with development from China. They are the new colonizers, and they will be the new colonizers. That's why these Chinese business persons could go into places like South Africa and beating on these Africans like they stole something. And now you got members of the ANC. I know Steve Biko is turning in his grave. You got members of the ANC who are Chinese now. When you rely on others, what Ibrahim should have done was employ the genius of black military professionals to help him build his military. He would have been better off than having another white man come and protect you. That don't look right, especially for those of us who understand history and how it works. That don't sit right with me. You got a myriad of black military professionals, rangers who can teach you, who can work with you. Why didn't he come to them? He went to another white man.
Right.
Come on now. I see the forest for what it is. You know, and like I said, I'm thankful and I am honored that I got the privilege to not just read their books, but sit before the feet of Dr. John Henry Clark, sit before the feet of Dr. Ben, who is of Puerto Rican descent and Ethiopian descent, but he loved FBA. He was there every week. Every week, he loved FBA. And he told Alton Maddox, you know, because Alton had lost his law license, of course, when he represented Al Sharpton. And,
Right.
you know, they used that as a stepping stone because, again, here's this FBA man from Noonan, Georgia, come to New York and whipping the criminal justice system like it stole something, you know. But he used his own history growing up in Noonan, Georgia. He told us he had to escape the Klan with his very life, that a rope was put around his neck. And if it wasn't for those FBA preachers down there, he would not be here. And so he used that angst and that history and that hurt to fight for members of the Black Liberation Army. You know, when Assata Shakur was on the run, you know, my uncle's wife's brother was her boyfriend at the time. She spent the day at my grandmother's house. And so we understood how we had to protect each other, look after each other, because we were all we had. When SWAT was first used in Brooklyn, you know who they called them on? My family. Because a police officer was trying to arrest my father at the time, and my grandmother came downstairs, and the police officer smacked my grandmother. And so her children and the block came down, and they started fighting, whipping on the police. And that's when SWAT was first used. And so, like I said, some of us, we have a history and an understanding because we were there, our families were there, and, you know, it's unfortunate that voices like myself and others, you know, are not in the forefront teaching our people what really happened, what really went down. And I'm thankful for you for inviting me to this space, first of all, to even speak about some of this history, you know, and we have to continue to talk about it so that we are clear in our direction when we come to talk about delineation, disaggregation. We have a history to stand on why we should be doing these things. This is not just coming out of our buttholes here. Our ancestors are waking us up. They are waking something within us and saying, speak for me. Speak for me. Speak for that great-great-grandmother and that great-great-grandfather who suffered on this soil. Speak for me. And now their descendants are speaking for them. Right now, in 2025, you never had so many Black Americans who are researching their genealogy like never before. It is a booming business right now of Black Americans researching their genealogy. And it's never happened like this before. That's because our direct ancestors are speaking through us. That's why I always say, go home to where your people were enslaved at. Go home to where your people were free and kidnapped at. That happened on my mother's maternal side. They were free Black people, and their children were kidnapped and sold into slavery. There was a whole story, once I started researching my family many years ago, I started to understand that, in school, they taught us about the Underground Railroad, but they never taught us about the reverse Underground Railroad. And when you study the reverse Underground Railroad, it will blow your mind of how many free Black people were kidnapped and sold, especially in the period after 1808 to 1865. The kidnappings were so rampant. David Ruggles holds a more significant place in history than Harriet Tubman does. And I stand on that because he was fighting these kidnapping clubs. These kidnapping clubs weren't just regular old white tea people. These kidnapping clubs were established by the Democratic Party themselves. There's a book that I was reading. It's called New York Kidnapping Clubs. And when you read that book, it talks about how the Democratic Party and judges and business elite were forming these kidnapping clubs. And, they had spread themselves to places like Boston. Philadelphia was another huge hub for kidnapping of free Black people at that time. And when you begin to research the reverse Underground Railroad, it will blow your mind. It will blow your mind. And so we are dealing with a system that has always thrown distractions in our way. And because we want to win so bad, we embrace a distorted view of history, and we ride on that. And that's why when we come into these spaces with white tea folks or others, they challenge us on our history and say, no, Africa sold y'all. And I used to see a lot of people get upset with that. Well, they did. They absolutely did. Wealthy elite families like the Efik House or those ports in what is now the Nigeria area, the Bani, the Calabar, Badagry, all of these slave hubs and ports, they were very, very profitable. They were in fact, one of the kings of the Dahomey, I think it was King Agaja, he said that slavery was the wealth and the wealth of the Dahomey. He said, that's our wealth. We can't get rid of that. We need that. But when people went out and saw the Woman King, because you don't understand history, I went to see it because I'm a lover and student of history. It doesn't bother me. But people looked at that as a feel-good moment. That's not a feel-good moment. That's not a flex. When you know the history, that ain't no damn flex. So, I just want us to just dig a little bit deeper into our story and how we came to be on this soil, everything that we endured on this soil, and why it is admired. That's why when people come here and they try to steal or co-opt the history, Why wouldn't you want to take from the best? That's what Garvey said. Why wouldn't you want to align yourself with the best? Q Hurt, if he would have came to the Bronx speaking with that accent he has. As a matter of fact, I just reshared a clip, I think on TikTok, where he said that it was persons like James Brown who came to Jamaica, who brought that music to Jamaica, who uplift Jamaica. He said it was persons like that, that made him want to, embrace that type of music. Because we were always fighting for everybody else. Always. Even when you look at the foundations of reggae, which is ska music, they mimicked records that Black Americans were making. They changed the sound of it so that it fits the dichotomy of where they are. But they used FBA music. That is the foundation of it. But you won't hear no Jamaicans come here and say that. They'll come here and say, like the dude from the UK, the Jamaican dude from the UK, he gonna try to say that the UK founded R&B. Are you crazy? Are you outside of your mind?
Right, I heard that. And what I was thinking was,
how old was that idiot?
Okay. Wait a minute, cousin. What he was missing was that the UK, the artists over there from Europe, used to come to our record labels and listen to the artists and kind of watch them. They weren't teaching our artists anything. They were trying to emulate them or take what they can from them. At least that's the way that I know it to be.
Oh yeah, listen. There's a museum in Nashville. It's called the National African American Music Museum. In that museum, they have the whole history of FBA music, that we were the blueprint for all genres of music. When you go into that museum, and I think everyone who has the ability to do so, to visit Nashville and go to that museum. It's in downtown Nashville, but it sits across from the harbor, or the harbor is maybe 3 blocks or 4 blocks away from the museum, right? And there is a marker on that harbor that talks about a man named Sam Keeble. And Sam Keeble was one of the first Black persons elected to the U.S. Senate. And Sam Keeble sat on the Committee of Immigration. He worked with persons like Booker T. Washington so that they can get Blacks from the diaspora to come into the U.S. because there was an influx of Irish and Italians who came to the U.S. and they wanted to balance the system a little bit. And so Sam Keeble was a businessman. He was a barber. He owned several businesses in that area. But he fought heavily so that people from the diaspora could come to the United States. But you never hear nobody mention Mr. Sam Keeble. And he was key in their immigration. And so if you ever get a chance to visit the city of Nashville, and I gotta warn you, it is very white tea. So, but the history that they have about our music there. Recently, I saw a video of 50 Cent, and he took a video, he did a live of himself visiting the museum, and he said it's something like he never seen before. When you talk about those old Negro spirituals and things like that, they have actual recordings of the sharecroppers who were singing those spirituals at that time. They have those actual recordings, and in fact, when you go there, you can purchase a bracelet, a digital bracelet. I think it costs like $5 or $6, if I'm not mistaken. I went there maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But anyway, it's about that price range. But you purchase the digital bracelets, and they have these musical consoles as you go throughout the museum, right? And you can scan that bracelet, and they will compile a Spotify music list for you to take home for free. And so I have a lot of those spiritual Negro recordings there. They also will teach you the influence. So say, for example, you're looking at like some persons, like, I don't know, let's just pick John Legend, right? They will play John Legend, and they will show you where he got his influence from, where that same cadence came from Stevie Wonder, where Stevie Wonder got it from, where the person before him got it from. They play all of these different cadences so you can hear the rhythmic sound and how it all originates to the original sound of those spirituals that you heard. There is a whole hall that they have on gospel. When you enter it, it's called Wade in the Water. But as you enter it, you begin to hear these Negro spirituals, and then you hear the Mahalia Jacksons and the like, and you can hear the cadences of where it all originated from. You know, I know people say that the blues predates country, but when you understand the history of music, country music predated the blues, because they have interviews with persons like Muddy Waters. And Muddy Waters and Miles Davis, these two interviews stuck out to me the most. Both of them said that their music came from the sound of the country. Their music came from those people who were working on those sharecrops, on those farms and those plantations back then. So he said, Miles Davis says, you call it jazz, but this is the music of my countrymen, of my family, of my people. That's what Miles Davis said in an interview. And so I know people, because the powers that be told us that blues is before country, when that is not so. There's another book, I think it's called Black Country. It's written by Alice Randall, I think it is her name, but it's called Black Country, the book. And in that book, she talks about the founding members of country music. And all of those persons she's talked about, they are in that museum. That is a powerful and great museum that I think everybody should visit, especially when you have people trying to co-opt, our musical history and our musical influence. All you got to do is, matter of fact, you can go online and they allow you to go through some of the exhibits and music that they have there. You can just start from their online expeditions and start from there. But when you go there and you gather all of that music, when I came back home and I started to play it, oh man, I can hear Marvin Gaye, where he got that sound from. I can hear Tupac and where he got that sound from. I can hear Queen Latifah and where she got that sound from, where it all originated from. The first black-owned record company came out of New York. Black Swan Records came right here out of New York. That was the first black-owned record label. The first recording artist was George Williams. George Johnson Williams, or George William Johnson. I may switch up the last name, but his song, his first #1 hit was called Whistling Coon. He was a street performer in the Times Square area, a free black man, a street performer in Times Square area, and he was introduced to these white tea folks who wanted to start a record label. And when you look at the history of George Johnson, when you look at his history and the recording that he did, Whistling Coon, it should tell all recording artists what the intentions of the business is. It's never to uplift you. If you understand, every recording artist today need to study that man's history, and that'll give you a blueprint of what it is that you're dealing with when you sit before these folks in suits and negotiate a deal. But again, I have to give Ultimatics the credit. He always told us, whatever it is you get into, like you say, you're a journalist. It's very important that you understand the history of journalism and where it all originated from and what its main purpose was, and have that be a blueprint for how you do your work. And I know that you do a great job, because I know what you do on these internet spaces. And so you may not understand this, but maybe the first writer who was black in this country, or going back to Phyllis Wheatley, if you will, maybe she is resonating something in you that is awakening that journalistic spirit that made you want to study journalism in the first place. And some people, we get into these fields and, we thrive, or it is a passion of ours, and we really don't understand why. What is awakening in you that making you want to do these things? And so Alton would always tell us, even if you're a criminal, you better understand the history of criminality, not just the operation that you're dealing with. You need to understand forensic science. You need to understand the law. You need to understand the criminal justice system and how it operates so that your behind don't end up behind bars. And I think some of our greatest in that element, that criminal element, persons like Bumpy Johnson. He was brought in by a Caribbean woman. What's her name? Oh man, she ran with the 5 Points gangs. I can't remember her name.
All I remember is they called her Queen from the movie.
Yes, her. In fact, there's a mob museum in Las Vegas. I know everybody go for gambling and partying, but visit the mob museum. When you come in the mob museum, she's the first exhibit that you see, because persons like Lucky Luciano and them, they modeled themselves after her. Madam Stephanie Sinclair, that's her name. Stephanie Sinclair, who employed Bumpy Johnson. Madam Stephanie Sinclair, she required her workers, I would say, in that business to give money to the UNIA. She required those workers to give money to people like Father Divine to help feed the hungry of Harlem. They were required to kick in money for that. And so she understood that the FBA people that she was providing, that number business to, that they had to be taken care of. And I have to give her credit. She is the only Caribbean person that I saw. I believe she's from Martinique, I believe. But anyway, she was the only person of that time that I saw who actually made it her priority to take care of her consumers. Those who played the numbers, she made sure that they were taken care of. And those who worked for her, like Bumpy Johnson, they embraced that. And that's why when he took over, he had a standard. You don't curse in front of women. You don't do this in front of women. My great grandmother was employed by Lucky Luciano. My great grandmother worked for him. When he had those whorehouses, she was employed to make sure that the people who cleaned did a good job, so that there was no diseases running around in his whorehouses. My great grandmother was working for Lucky Luciano. And so, we really have to understand how it worked. And when you study history, family, you don't just look at one thing. You read articles, you get a map of that time, and you compile all of that information so that it gives you a clear understanding of what it is that you're reading or studying at that particular time. And so you can't look at the UNIA as a single entity. What was happening in New York at that particular time that made Black people gravitate towards him? There was a lot of lynchings that were happening. In fact, when you look at the movie Hoodlum, there is when Queen was pew-pewed in the street, as the camera pans back, there is a flag that waves in the balance, and it says Negroes against lynching, right? Negro rule against lynching, or something like that. But that was the original NRA. That was the original NRA. And a lot of people don't know that history. And so people like Ida B. Wells and, they tried to, or they did embrace Garvey at that particular time, because there was so much that was going on. She herself was an investigator for those lynchings that took place. When they had the World's Fair in Chicago, Fred Douglass, who was one of the worst Umar like to say, requested speakers at that time. The U.S. would not give him a pavilion to host and to speak to the public like they gave everybody else. And so the nation of Haiti came in and gave Fred Douglass a pavilion so that he and Ida B. Wells and others could do their work. It was key because while the World Fair was taking place, you had a serial killer over there. And he was unaliving folks and forcing their families to turn over insurance policies to him. And so all of these things were taking place while the World Fair was happening. And so she created booklets letting people know, especially Black people who traveled to the World's Fair, because again, there were so many free Black people, letting them know what to look out for. And I have to give credit to the nation of Haiti for hosting a pavilion for Fred Douglass, even though they said here in the U.S. he was the most requested speaker, but the U.S. government wouldn't allow him to have a pavilion, and Haiti came in and stepped in. And so I have to give credit for that. You have to. I don't look for feel-good history. I look for history as it is.
Understood. I do understand. So shout out to them for that. Shout out to them for 1804. You know what it is? So I wasn't a Pan-African in the sense that you were like so involved and stuff. And some of the events that you're saying that I remember, I was still a teen, so I was looking up to Queen Latifah and the hip hop artists who were very Afrocentric and stuff like that. And what I noticed is that today's Pan-Africans on this app at least, right? Because we do know that there's still Pan-Africans in New York putting in the work, regardless to how I feel about it. And I always give them their just due, right? So there's Pan-Africans who still own schools in New York. So I'd say if I had grandchildren or God, bless me with another child, I'd rather put my children in a Pan-African school in New York than the public school system. But what I'm finding is the ones on this app are surface level, right? They want to kind of use our history to tether on, and when it doesn't go right, they diminish that history. So everything is geared and centered towards improving Africa, but it's not for the whole. Right. Because the whole would include us. Right. Now, we do know the AU, so I want to point that out, right? So I think that you can be Pan-African and champion the diaspora, but when it comes to lineage business, which reparations is one, us having certain things just for us, they could say, look, you have to fight your government. You can't impose on my people. Like, why are these Pan-Africans on this app? What do you think about them? Because I'm just like... they've turned me off from everything. I don't want to meet with nobody. I don't want to, act like we going to be friends down the line, because I think they said and did too much on this app and in our government, especially when they're voting no to things like reparations.
Definitely, and I agree with you 100%, and I'm at that very same sentiment. They have aligned themselves with the power structure, because it's beneficial for them to do so. And that's why they do it. They have no benefit or no skin in the game aligning themselves with FBA. And so they take that approach. And that's why I say, when they come into our spaces, and I'm listening, I'm always listening. They come in and they try to chastise us or try to give us, well, this person was helping y'all or that person was helping y'all. Don't try to convince us. Convince your tribe. Ask yourselves, why is it that your people do not support us in the physical? Meaning all the Divine asked for, all the Freedmen's Project asked for was a letter of support. They didn't ask them to march. They didn't ask them to give no money. Just a letter of support. And not one out of over 50, almost 100 organizations even dignified him with a response. And so that tells me that, they have aligned themselves in particularly with the Democratic establishment. And that Democratic establishment has always, from its inception, the 8th president of the U.S., Martin Van Buren, was the founder of the Democratic Party. And the first person he ran was the guy on the $20 bill, Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was brutal as far as black people is concerned. And his vice president, John C. Calhoun, was so brutal that Andrew Jackson had him arrested because he was so brutal. And so when they come in, they align themselves, with that power structure to help take us down. Because as Garvey said, we are the best. There is no race consciousness in this country without foundational Black Americans. We are that consciousness. And so for a establishment or a dominant power such as the Democratic Party, why wouldn't they allow persons to come across and become naturalized citizens who will advocate on their behalf? That's why you can have Africans who could come in and align themselves with the likes of a Charlie Kirk, and stand on that type of business against us. You have to be against the best. We are the best around the world. Our culture is mimicked around the world. No one else's. Our music is embraced around the world. No one else. We, FBA, Foundational Black Americans, have the most inventions of all of diaspora. We are the best. We are. You wouldn't have lights. You wouldn't have street lights. You couldn't use a toilet bowl. You couldn't wear glasses. You can't drive a car without GPS. All of this without FBA. And so why wouldn't? It's just like a sport. When you're playing the sport, you want to come against the best so that you can prove to the world that you are the best. But it's not working and they can't take it. And so they become frazzled. They don't know how to adapt. They don't know. They haven't been trained in race consciousness. They ran from nations, from people who look just like them. We have to fight people who Malcolm says, and y'all know what he said about the house and the field. We got to fight the house folks, and we got to fight white tea folks. And we've been doing a hell of a job doing it and still becoming successful. When you have places like Tulsa, Oklahoma, I know a lot of people like to use that, so I'm going to stay on that. They were so prominent that when France was on its decline, they came to those black businessmen in Tulsa asking for a loan. People don't read that history. They went to Tulsa asking them brothers and sisters, could we get a loan? The nation of France. And so, like I said, we have always been the best. We still are the best, and they cannot take it. They still trying to get a footing, and it unravels them because even in our ignorance of who we are still the best. We are still the best. Even in criminality, when you look at criminality around the world, let's take Haiti, for example. A nation who has no military worth the paper is printed on. You have people and factions who are fighting each other, unaliving each other to uphold a system that they claim that they're against. Where is your legal work to fight against it? It doesn't exist. All you have is a bunch of people fighting each other. And those who can't fight each other jump in the ocean and try to swim their way here. Everybody wants to be among the best, and it hurts for them to admit that. It hurts that in 2025, that their ancestors, talking about the continent, their ancestors who sold us into slavery, that the descendants are still better than they are, and they have their own nation, that they claim they have their own independence. And you still gotta You still have nothing. Where are your inventions at to match ours? Where is your economic prowess to match ours? In a nation that you claim is your own. In a nation that you claim you have your own culture. In a nation that you claim you have your own leaders. And you still have not matched what we have done in the 1800s, the early 1900s, the mid-1900s, the late 1900s. You still have not matched that greatness that we have. And so that is an angst that they have. Who were them? They are the Akata, descendants of the Akata, and they're still great. And we can't break that wall. No, you can't break this wall. Because, like Garvey said, our race consciousness is what binds us together. You have Black Democrats, and I don't understand how there were Black Democrats when it was that party, that sanctioned your enslavement in the first place. But that's another story. You have Black Republicans, you have Black Libertarians, you have Black Independents. But when something goes awry, you see all of us come together for a particular issue. When we talk about Tulsa and we talk about the burning and all of that happened, very seldom do you hear people talk about they rebuild it. They rebuilt it.
Yeah.
In a matter of time, they rebuild it. And people don't like to talk about that. You today in the U.S., you have about 30, some well-to-do, some not, but 30 Black self-sustaining communities in the United States. One of them being Oaks Bluff on Martha's Vineyard. And so, and I would encourage everybody, if you want to see how Black elite move, take a trip to Oaks Bluff. And one time I went down there, and I like to take these trips often. When I find a good rate, I'm going to go. I just went to Wyoming not too long ago to the town of Sheridan and met with the Black sheriff down there. And he took me around the town because he couldn't believe that somebody from Brooklyn, New York, a Black person, would take a trip to his little town. And he asked me, he said, "What made you want to come here?" I said, "Because I'm nosy." And he started laughing, right? And he said, "You nosy?" I said, "Anything that I get inquisitive about, I'm going to find out about." And he took me to the Black, there's a diner or a restaurant, cafe, I should say, down there. And he took me to meet the owner. He took me to several Black doctors. He just drove me around. I was only there for 3 days, but he wanted me to see the entirety of the town. He said because his family was born and raised in Wyoming, and he had never in his life seen a Black American come from another part of the country just to visit them. I said, "Brother, I want to know what's going on here, because when I'm ready to leave New York, I want to see where I can plant my seed at, where I can plant my footing at. I'm about to take another trip down to Huntsville, Alabama, because I want to see what's going on down there." And when I went to Mississippi, I went, a lot of people never talk about vacationing in Mississippi, but you should, to see those small towns in the Delta that are suffering, that still don't have proper transportation or water line system. And it hurts me when I see persons like Oprah Winfrey and all these people want to open schools up on the continent of Africa, but you miss the Delta and you claim you from the South? To me, that's an injustice. And so I go and I visit these places by myself, sis. By myself. I get my backpack and I'm out. Because I want to see, sometimes you got to move stealth in places like this. And so it's not often too good, especially when you're moving throughout Mississippi and Louisiana, to move with large delegations. You would be better off linking up with a person down there who can pick you up and drive you and take you around to certain places down there. That's what I did anyway, because I wanted to visit Roosevelt, Mississippi. I wanted to see where Fannie Lou Hamer came from. I wanted to see the story that she talked about. And when you visit those places, it will blow your mind
of how they are still trapped in a slave-like system that they are fighting to get out, but their stories aren't being told. A lot of people like us who come from these big cities don't go down and visit and talk to the people on the ground. See why a lot of these towns are literally ghost towns right now, and you have Black people who are still trying to hold on to what they have, trying to hold on to the history, especially in places like Clarksdale, Mississippi. That's the home of the blues. That's where Morgan Freeman was born at, you know. And when I visit these places and I see, you know, it really hurts me that we are not in touch or in tune with our family down there, because they have the resources, we have the capital. And so when I see people say, well, I'm going to go take mine and I'm going to go to Ghana and live, or I'm going to take mine and I'm going to go here and live. They have whole towns you can buy for $200 and some odd $1,000 and rebuild those towns for yourselves. Small towns in Arkansas that I visited, whole towns are on sale that you can buy for less than $500,000 and create your own town. They want us to come down there and bring our resources. That's where we should be taking our resources to. The land of our forefathers and mothers, the land that they toiled. We need to take our resources and go back down there before you thinking about going abroad. Knock it off.
I'm with you. I am.
And so I see, sis, and I got to get out of here soon, but okay. I see, sis, that, you know, why they are coming for our legacy, why they are doing what they are doing. They know who we are. Sister Brooks says, she tells a story of a friend that she has who is of Nigerian descent. And she saw her wearing some cowrie shells, a cowrie shell necklace, I think, or a bracelet. And she said she got into a conversation with this Nigerian sister, and the sister was telling her, you know, yes, we did sell y'all. Yes, we did. We know. She's told Brooke, I don't want you to be romanticized with Africa. We sold y'all for those very cowrie shells that you're wearing. And Brooke says, you know, it brought tears to her heart. And her Nigerian friend, hugged her and embraced her and loved on her and said, you are my sister. And that's why I'm telling you this truth. And she said that's when an awakening somewhat happened with her. Mm-hmm. They know who we are. We are the best around the world. No matter what anybody says, even our criminals are mimicked abroad because they see them as the best. Yeah. When you had, I know you remember because we're of a certain age, but when you had criminal enterprises like the Shower Posse and all of them, they didn't go amongst their own folks. They came where we lived at and operated those criminal enterprises. When you look at places like the Bronx, where you're from, which is an international hub, if you ask me, outside of Flatbush, Brooklyn, those
you
two
know why
places,
that is?
Go ahead, sis.
You know there's only one way into the shelter system, right? And as expensive as it is. So we got people from Florida, people from North Carolina, because those places that don't have a good shelter system, they will travel to New York and enter in through the Bronx. That's my assessment of why we're a hub. I believe it starts there. And even for the single people intake, you got to come through the Bronx.
Wow, yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But like I said, you know, Crown Heights, which is a hub for the Caribbean community, was once called Crow Heights. They called it Crow Heights because Black lawyers and doctors, foundational Black American, that is, were the owners of those mansions and stuff that are in Crown Heights area. And so white tea folks and their media outlets, you know, threw a dig and called it Crow Heights because they were Black people down there who were wealthy and controlled those communities. And now, they have passed on. And now you have the Caribbean who were in that area. I was a part of those riots that happened when the sister was unalived at the Korean market. But it was the Caribbean community that came in later and said that they wanted to work with the Asian community. They wanted to work with the Jewish community down there. It was them who betrayed us. We were on the front lines. We were the ones who was throwing hands out there. I was a teenager in the 1980s. 1988, I was 18 years old. We was out there throwing hands. And, it was them who came in, and those black police officers, I got to give credit. When we was coming up there and we was throwing hands, they the ones who said, nah, let them rock. Let them rock. When Gavin Cato and his cousin or sister who was unalive by the Jewish gentleman in that car accident, and the Jewish community got him out of the U.S. and sent him to Israel, it was Black American law attorneys who went there and got him and brought him back. Persons like Lewis Clayton Jones and Alton Maddox. And it really disturbs me that the daughter of his brother, William Augustus Jones, one of the New York's most prominent pastors at that time, is on the commission of the New York State Reparations Commission, and she talking this Pan-Africanist stuff. But I get it because she comes from that element, but she is very strong and wrong in her approach.
Wow. So, okay, I know you got to go, but what do you foresee for New York as far as our relationship with the Caribbeans and the reparations hearing? I see Deborah Jenkins, Dr. Deborah Jenkins, let me give her credit. Yeah. Dr. Deborah Jenkins is still listed as being on the board, so I'm happy for that. But what are your thoughts?
I am very leery of the persons like Attorney Lori Jones, people like Ron Daniels, who have their own vested interest in getting reparations for everybody because it is beneficial to his IBW 24 business. When I say persons or groups like the December 12th movement, who operates out of a Pan-Africanist mindset, come in and give testimony, I find that to be problematic. They are still operating as if we're in the 80s. We are not. We are dealing with a whole new regime of folks who came in and trying to replace us. Just like everything in history, when things are in motion, you have to be able to pivot. And a lot of these old heads, they are not able to pivot. And, they have always been compromisers. I have to tell that truth. Ron Daniels and IB24 have always been aligned with the Democratic Party. It's beneficial for him to shut down reparations as it pertains to lineage base. It's beneficial for him to do that. In fact, from my understanding in the beginning, there were even more Pan-Africanists on the commission, but the U.S. Freedmen's Project here in New York fought against that and had 4 of the seats removed and replaced with persons like Dr. Deborah Jenkins, Senator Sanders, who was on board with lineage-based reparations. They are now understanding, because of the work that everybody's doing online, the work of the new black media, they are now understanding and they have pivoted. It is those others who have not. There is another sister, I forget her name, but anyway, her family is from Jamaica. And when they see Sister Brooke and myself and Brother Devon, it just rubs her the wrong way. And that's why, Dr. Jenkins said to us, I need y'all support. I need y'all support. And that's why we try to make it our business to crisscross the state. We took a 7-hour trip up to Rochester, New York, just to make sure we were there to support her, because we know the shenanigans that go on behind the scene. I am thankful that Senator Sanders is at least has at least pivoted to what the FBA delineation movement is, and is speaking from that paradigm now. He wasn't before, but he is now. And so I employ all of us who have these social media spaces to keep doing this work, because it is being heard. It is being looked at, whether we know it or not, and it is working. That's why Assemblywoman Nikki Lucas supports the U.S. Freedmen Project 100% and took their bill and brought it to the floor, because of the work that the new black media and all of these FBA spaces are doing. So don't let up. Keep it going, because you don't know that you are pivotal in making it happen. So, I congratulate everyone who was doing it. Yes, you're going to have people who come in our spaces who try to disrupt or interject themselves when they shouldn't. It is to be expected. This is a war, and we have to understand that we are on a battlefield. And you're going to get people who look like you who are on the battlefield to replace you for the exact same thing that Garvey said. We are the best of all the diaspora, and we have to hold on to that and just stay steadfast. If you can attend these meetings virtually, I believe they allow you to give testimony in written form or in video form. And if you can't be in upstate New York or in Ithaca, we trying to get a delegation to go to Ithaca next week. But if you can't do it, then be on virtually. Send your written testimony. Sign the petition that Sister Brooke and Brother Devon have been passing around on platforms like X. We need your support, because we will be your voices in these rooms. We are your voices in these rooms. And believe it or not, it is working. And, we don't want this bill to pass as it is. We want them to break it down. And it's working. It's working in our favor. So just keep up the work that y'all doing.
Can I tell you? So I do attend virtually. I'm just not under the name BX. I send in 15-page written testimony. I have not gone virtual or in person yet, because I'm waiting for everybody to kind of play their hand. So that's where I'm at with it. So I could just come up in my mind, I'm coming up in the rear with my family, because I do have family that were enslaved by the Dutch in New York and New Jersey. And what I'm noticing is the Caribbean isn't personalizing their history. So they're just going by textbook, but I have actual history, actual emotion, actual feelings, and actually am very upset with them the way they just coddled the Caribbeans and put the Dutch on the docket the next. You know what I'm saying? They should have led with that, right? Because it is New York history. Mm-hmm. But and me, who has the history, didn't even do that, right? So now the Caribbean comes in, and I didn't like the manner she was speaking, like, you better, pointing the finger and all that there. Mm-hmm. And then the next week I got to look, and the Dutch is on the docket. Like, what do y'all do? The history is there. Why didn't y'all do that up front first? Like, leave it that. But that's just my personal feeling. So I kind of want everybody to play their hand. And then I'm going to come in with my 15-page letter. They probably, cut my time. But I'm coming in, and I'm going to come in strong.
I love it, sis. I love it. I love it. I love it.
And let me say this,
sister. And I'm going to say this, and I got to go.
Okay.
But for those of us who say that we shouldn't call ourselves black, let me tell you something. Our ancestors, in particular here in New York, who were enslaved to the Dutch, they were given their own land once they ended that servitude, right? And it was they called it, this is in the 1600s, they called themselves Land of the Blacks, which is now Washington Square Park. That used to be where we lived when we came out of indentured servitude. They gave us all of that land, and the parts they didn't give us, we bought it, like Lower Manhattan, all the way when you come up Spring Street or Dominic Street. All of those were avenues that free black people purchased, and they called themselves Land of the Blacks. And you can Google that. Google Land of the Blacks and Washington Square Park. So when people say we didn't call ourselves black, that's a damn lie. There is written history that proves that. Fred Douglass identified himself that way. David Walker identified himself that way. Martin Delaney identified himself that way. And they came way before us. They identified themselves as black. And when the immigration started to happen, that's when they became and started to embrace all of Africa. And then you had the AME Church, which is the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Then you had these names that were named on top of that as Afro to include the diaspora who were trickling in. And if you don't believe me, take a trip to the New York Historical Society, purchase a $100 membership so you can get access to the archives and read it for yourselves. The history is there. I'm a member of the New York Historical Society, so I know. I'm a member of the New York Ethical Society. I purchase memberships in these places so I can get access to the information. There's another museum that you rarely see Black people visit in New York, and it's the J.P. Morgan Personal Museum and Library. When you book an appointment, I had an appointment last month, but I was hospitalized, so I missed that appointment. But I booked another appointment that I'm going to go again the end of this month, so I can get access to the letters that his father was writing to his colleagues at that time, talking about how these former enslaved were calling themselves black. So I don't want to hear no rhetoric from anybody who's saying we didn't identify that out that way. That's a damn lie. And that tells me that you ain't been in these spaces. I know, because I can pick out Black people on one hand because you don't go to these spaces.
Right.
And I have to give kudos. You know, when we went to Rochester for the hearing, you had one Puerto Rican council person. And when he got up to give testimony and he saw what was happening and what, you know, people were trying to do as far as grandfather clausing themselves onto our lineage, he said, we're not even supposed to be here. That's what he said. He said, we're wrong. We shouldn't even be here. But, you know, I yield to that. I got to go. I got some Ramblers.
Thank you. I'm definitely going to inbox you because I really, okay, so I'm having my new YouTube channel. I got like one video up with an interview of me and Melrose Radio. I plan to put this on YouTube too, but I want to host a live panel, and I would love for you to be a guest. You are just filled with so much knowledge, but the date is tentative, and I thank you for your time today because you really didn't have to join, but you did, and I appreciate you for that.
No problem, sis. Just send me the details. Send me your YouTube channel, and so we can start spreading it and getting it, you know, up and popping.
Thank you.
All right.
I just wanted to say thank you, sister. That's all I wanted to say. You've given so much knowledge and information. I do appreciate the time that you put in.
Right.
And please come back. We look forward to it very much.
Anytime. You know, I try to make it. Every time BX send me an invite, I try to make it. And I will make it my business to do that. But again, I got to go. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all day and keep the fight going on.
Of course.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, take care now.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Cousin, that was such a beautiful history. Did you hear it?
Yes, of course I did.
I know.
Don't get me wrong. It's not like I can multitask. I mean, I was married. I learned to do a thing or two at the same time. Okay.
I'm going to end the live on that note. Do you have any last words?
Well, no, you know, she. I was so very grateful that she actually mentioned the New Black Media.
Yeah.
Because see, that's what we have to do. That is where I believe we form our strongest brigade.
Well, you should
is
follow
not letting any false information get through.
She has her own YouTube channel too, and every now and then I peek in her room and I sit there for a little while.
What's her name again? What name is she going under? Thorough Black Thought.
Yeah, talk. That's my accent.
Talk. Okay.
Talk.
I
Yeah.
know that's that. Listen, I'm trying. Listen,
Do
I
you
have been
still see
south. I've been
her?
north. I'm real good with accents, baby. But every now and again, I get something wrong.
It came out wrong. Have you
That's
her profile picture is still in the chat. If you click it, it'll bring you up where you could just follow her page and
I think I followed her while she was talking. I followed her.
Okay, so then check her bio because it'll probably have the link
Yeah, I
in
am.
there. Mm-hmm. Well,
I'll
thank you
make
for
sure I do
spending the
that.
morning with me.
No, thank you. It's not like Well, anyway.
And you got an earful. This was authentic history. Stuff I didn't
And
even know.
see,
Stuff about New York. Because when a lot of that was going on, I was like 14. Right?
see,
Yeah.
she said she's a child of the '70s, and it was my issue was I'm in Detroit, and because of you being more centrally located for the figures to meet up in
Mm-hmm.
places,
Mm-hmm.
that gave you all greater access as a, for lack of a better word, village to
Right.
come together and catch them cats. Okay, whereas for
Yeah.
me, unless that same group traveled to Detroit, and at that point in time, I'm 14, 15 myself, maybe, because
Right.
I think she said I'm a little bit older than her. So, and knowing who I was, what some of my family was like, it would have been interesting. I said before, I told you my elder brothers got to actually hear Malcolm speak, and that was just up the street from Muslim Mosque number 7 for us.
Nice.
So they were very fortunate in this. So the idea of how, deep our history is, yes, the
Yeah.
information that she was imparting was masterful, and I did appreciate it.
Yeah.
So if you are out
Thank
there and
you.
you were listening, I know you got some good earful of information that you can use on your next talk with somebody, because you can't keep that. And my only other thing I might say is to all the people, well, all 5 of us, is go to your library. And your
Yes.
library is your elder citizen, your elder cousin, your grandma. Go to that library and take out that book. Then go back tomorrow and take out another book. Go back and take out another book. You want these books to be passed down.
Yes, we do.
Without
Oh,
our oral histories, just remember, they put a whole, they gave cats a job to go study our oral histories and what we had been through. I don't know if
yeah.
they still in the Library of Congress, but that's where they were.
Mhm.
Our history is there. Go pick out a book. Go talk to your elders and pick out a book. All right, I'll end it with that, sweetie.
All right. Have a blessed day, cousin.
You too, baby. All right, bye
All
bye.
right. Peace. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the live. Thank you for all the likes, the gifts. I can't talk this morning. My God, I'm enamored by the history I heard. Um, Thank you all for gifting, liking, and peace, love, and reparations to my foundational Black Americans. I love y'all for real.